So my name's Alberto Nuñez, and I've been a bodybuilder for about 20 years, I'd say. But competitively, it's been about 10 years. Professional, about 8 of those years. And I've had this company for about 10 years now. So me and my buddies, we formed this company called 3D Muscle Journey. We cater to drug-free bodybuilders and powerlifters. And aside from coaching, we also just try to contribute to like the knowledge base that's out there. So that's our twist, man. Man, I didn't want to lift weights because my dad did it and he was really good at it. So, you know, you don't want to do with what you know, your parents are doing. Like, you kind of rebel against that. So forever, like, all my homies were like I want to lift weights, I'm gonna look like this dude and that dude, and it didn't appeal to me. Like, I didn't really see much there. But I think the first time I ever really tried to lift weights and go in there, like, it felt right. Everything about it's like, I want to do this more often. Learn how shit works first. So you need to have that educational component, and then once you know how to, because like anyone could just come into this gym, it's like there's all these awesome tools, but it's like put me in a cart and I can like get in a garage for cars. I don't know what the fuck, like there's all this useful stuff in there, but I wouldn't know what to do with it. So like principles and exercises and all that, they're tools. So like learn what they do, learn how to maximize each tool, and then like bring them out when you need to. So I think that's how I like to look at it. I think if you kind of know how both worlds operate, because we use a lot of similar tools, you know, when you think about it. And there's things that like bodybuilders can learn from powerlifters, and then the other way around. So like for me, kind of being stuck in the middle, not stuck, it's a privilege to be in the middle. I'm aware of like both ends. I've definitely taken, like, I was telling Mark this, man, like seeing a bodybuilder walk out his squat with like 8 steps. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's like, we can make this so much more efficient. And the same thing with like when I see a powerlifter like do an accessory movement, like I'm like, bro, we can make this like way cleaner. So I feel that bodybuilders are probably a little bit more conscious when it comes to the recovery aspect. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we spend a good chunk of the year training with less fuel than what our body actually needs. So you have to make the most out of that. So, you know, you probably do a better job distributing your calories and making sure like, hey, I get enough protein, you know? You probably, we hear the hermit bodybuilder, right? They kind of get into that mind where it's like, you know what, I need to get my sleep in. You know, I'm gonna cut out some of the extracurriculars in life that make life fun, right? So I think a lot of the behavioral aspects, things that don't necessarily happen in the gym, I think bodybuilders, you at some point get really good at maximizing those. So I think that's the key element. It's like, hey, go live with a bodybuilder for 3 weeks and you'll pick up some things and you'll see that impact your training. You hear a lot of bodybuilders talk about the mind-muscle connection. And I think what that means more than anything is just like learning to move in the correct way to hit those muscles, you know, because it's not necessarily about moving as much weight, but more so distributing load to the areas that you want to target. You know, if you need some more triceps to help improve your bench press, you know, like there's a way to maximize your isolation work, and I think bodybuilders do a really, really, really good job at that. I think bodybuilders tend to be a little bit more protein focused, whereas powerlifters sometimes tend to be a little bit more like, they're more so interested in getting like enough fuel and maybe not necessarily via the most efficient ways. So sometimes, you know, a powerlifter will consider like nachos with like, that are loaded, like that's a protein feeding and some calories. And you know, because bodybuilders don't get to eat enough year round, they kind of have to like break that plate more so into like protein for this, carbs for that, fat for this, that sort of deal. So I think nutritionally, that's where bodybuilders get it. It's like they understand the power of the protein and they make it a habit to get enough, you know, chronically. The way that powerlifters move on big movements, I think, is huge. And those are like the big stones in your training, like your big compound movements. You know, that's where a lot of your base is going to be built up. And sometimes like bodybuilders aren't necessarily, they're not too interested in like refining their technique on the movements. They just do it, but they just do it. And I think with powerlifters, because sometimes you can make a few little tweaks here and there and it's like, boom, you're stronger, you're performing better, right? Like you've had that happen to you where it's like someone just adjusts these minor things that you can't even see with the naked eye, but all of a sudden you're performing better. And bodybuilders think of it from this perspective that, you know, I'm not a powerlifter, so I don't need to lift more weights, but it's like, hold up, what do muscles do? They move joints. So if you're able to, you know, increase the loads and do more reps on the big compound movements, you're going to see that show up as muscle eventually, you know? So I think that's the big thing, is powerlifters know how to move much better when it comes to multi-joint movements. And yeah, I'll see my bros like walk out like the squat, like it's like 8 steps, like a crooked setup when they get it off the rack, and you know, just a bench press is like not tight, you know, things like that they can do. That these are the big parts, you know. It's like maximize those, because you can get so much from those to the point where maybe your isolation movements don't have to do as much. The biggest legs that I've personally seen, like, it's not the bodybuilders, it's like the powerlifters. So like powerlifters will have these glutes, these hamstrings, these quads, these pecs that are way bigger than like what you'll see on someone who's like actually trying to grow those body parts. And it's because, again, they know how to, it's mechanical tension that makes muscles grow. And powerlifters, because their sport depends on it, they have to see those numbers go up. Whereas I think sometimes bodybuilders rely a little bit too much on like subjective feedback. Did I get a pump? Am I tired? Like that sort of stuff. But it's like, that's fine. It happens sometimes in training. You'll get a pump, you get tired, but are you getting better? So yeah, there's a time and a place for both. There's a time and a place to connect with your muscles and like really make sure you localize the fatigue to the area that you're trying to maximize. And then there's a time to just like, you just gotta add some load. You gotta add some reps, because we can't be lifting the same weight forever. I'm always looking for like little things that I can add to make it more challenging. And that year, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do USAPO Nationals and I'm gonna do a professional bodybuilding show. And they were 4 days apart. I ended up not being, you know, you gotta specialize. And so I learned that lesson. It's like, yeah, you could be pretty good, but like at some point, like, you know, like even dual athletes, like professional dual athletes, there was one sport that a little bit better at. So at that point, I'm like, bodybuilding, that's what I have to do. That's my calling, I guess. But what I learned was that one first. It's like, hey, you can't have too many things going on at once. And then it's just like the mental toughness aspect of it, because they were both hard in their own way. Like there's days when you come in when you're powerlifting, it's hard to explain to someone, but like your bones hurt. Like your bones hurt, and like squatting with just the bar is like, I don't even know if I could hit parallel today. And then with bodybuilding, it's the other way around. It's like, I literally don't even want to move out of this bed right now. I could just chill here all day. So kind of having both those things grouped together, hardest thing I've done athletically, and I didn't do them as well as I would have liked. But in terms of like what I got up here, it's like now things are a little bit more of a breeze. I could always go back to that and be like, okay, dude, you've done shit that's much harder than this. Get after it. Yeah, there was days that were more catered to one than the other for sure, but most of the time I found myself having to do both. So that was the hard part. It's like I'd get done with like my squat and my bench press, and it's like, dude, you're not done. Now you got to go like hit all those bodybuilder muscles with the same authority that you would have had it been the only thing you've done today. So that was probably the hardest part, is like still finding, because you got to do the powerlifting stuff first, you know, and then you go do the bodybuilding. Like finding enough gas to do that right was just like treacherous, man. I didn't get as lean as like previous years. I was like protecting my performance a little bit too much. And I'm like, hey, I can lose 3 pounds, but at this point it's gonna matter and I'm gonna feel it. So that's probably what I did incorrectly, was just I didn't get into my hallmark shape, because I wanted to like still like, you know, do the big 3 at a certain level. It was kind of like a really good athlete growing up. There's probably something good to being well-rounded, But at a certain point, it's like, hey, so you want that college scholarship? Like, hey, you're gonna have to pick one or the other. So I think for me, it was that turning point where it's like, okay, you're much better at this compared to that one. But at the same time, I got so much from like learning to powerlift, and like I still coach powerlifters, and I feel like I'm fairly competent at that. And it's because, again, like I've taken from both worlds. So think of it more so. First of all, just to be great at something is like a fucking privilege. But to be the best you, you're probably gonna find that like doing just one thing. However, there's nothing wrong with like learning a little bit about everything, and just consider it more so of a course you're taking than like what you should be doing. Like if you want to maximize yourself and that's what you're into. So 3dmusclejourney.com, like you can find myself and then my squad, which I think we're the best in the biz, man. Like that's me. But we've been around for 10 years now. It's closing in on 10 years. So 3dmusclejourney.com. Through there you can find like all our links to our social media pages. And me personally, I'm super present on Instagram. Like I like to hop on that story, and like whenever I get an idea, it's like boom, boom, boom. So that's been super convenient. How easy and efficient it is to like just dispense information out there, and you're like, holy shit, all these thousands of people saw this today. Like that's good, I'm helping. So our website, and then we're all pretty active on social media, YouTube, all that stuff.